Welcome to this module. So in this module, we are going to develop the CSS changer application. So let me first show you the application that we are going to build in this module. So this is the final version of the application that we are going to build in this entire module. So you can see we have these particular sliders. With the use of these sliders, we can actually change the CSS of the project. So right now, if I actually change the color first, because right now the background color and the foreground color of the border is actually same. Now with the use of this border radius slider, I can change the rounded corners of the border, means the border radius of the particular image container. Or also I can select the padding. I can change the padding. This is actually a CSS changer. Or I can change the blurriness of the image. And also I can change the width of this particular image. And also if I want to change the border color, I can change a different border color, or I can reduce the blurriness and also the padding, and I can increase the width as well. So this is the project that we're going to build. It's a pretty basic CSS changer project, but you can actually add more functionality as per your needs. So I'm going to show you how to use these 5 CSS options to change the CSS at runtime by using the JavaScript code. Alright. So in the next part, we're going to start with the HTML part of the project. Now for the saving of the time, I have created the files inside the Visual Studio Code, which is the index.html, style.css and the script.js file. Now inside of the index.html, first I'm going to press the shift and sign of exclamation key, and I'm going to press the tab key. So this will actually give us the boilerplate code for the HTML. Then I'm going to change the name of the project to CSS. After that, we need to link this style.css and the script.js file to our index.html. So for the linking of the CSS file, we need to use the link tag. So here we need to specify the name of the file, which is style.css. And then for linking the script file, we need to use script.src and then script.js file. So I have actually named it as a script.js. So I have actually forgot the T, but so that's actually fine because we need to link the JavaScript file. Once we link these files, it's time to run this project. So first I'm going to dispose it because I have actually run the previous project. So I'm going to click on this Go Live Server extension again. Now you can see we get the our version of the application, which is this CSS changer application. And this will be the CSS changer, which is the final version of the application that we want to build. Now first we need to specify a bunch of HTML elements. So the first thing is we need to create the container. So here we need to create the container. So I'm going to use the emit shortcut plugin, which is the container. Inside of the container, I'm going to specify the h1 element, and inside of the h1 element, I will be displaying this particular text. So I'm going to copy the text and pasting it inside the h1 element. Now you can see once we come back to our version of the application, you can see now the heading is actually displayed inside the browser. After that, we need to use the span tag, and inside of that span, we need to provide the class heading. Alright, and then we need to provide the JavaScript, because the content of this particular JavaScript, which is this particular span element, we are also going to update its color, just like here. If I change the color to like green one, you can see now the color of this particular JavaScript span, which having a class heading, is also changed. Now coming back to our version of the application, after specifying the code inside the container, then we need to create the class, which is the division class, which is called the CSS controller. So here CSS hyphen. So it is like the CSS controller. Inside of this particular division, we are going to specify all of these particular controllers. Alright. So the first thing is we need to create this circular thing that is actually used to change the color. So this is actually a label. So label tag. And for we have used here a base because we are going to change the base color, and then the label text that we want to display is the base color. Okay, and after that we need to provide the input type. So input, the type is going to be like color. Alright, and then we need to specify the name. So the name is going to be like base, and then we need to specify the ID. So ID is also going to be like base. And then we need to specify the value, which is the default color value, which is going to be like FF000. If I control save it, you can see now we get this base color input type. So if I select it, we can select here a different color. If I select the green, you can see now the green color is saved inside of this particular input base color. And if I refresh and again change the color, you can see here. So this is what the first controller of the CSS will be looks like. So I'm going to actually do it like this way. Alright. And after that, we need to create the another label. So this particular label is for the width. And then we need to display the text is also width. Okay. And you can see now the text width is actually appeared. Then we need to specify the input type. So input, the type is going to be like range. And then I'm going to split this into multiple lines like this one. Okay, so type is going to be range, and then we need to specify the ID. So ID is going to like width, and then we need to specify the name. So name is also going to be like width, and then we need to specify the minimum value, which is going to be 0, then the maximum value, which is going to be 100, and then the default value that we want to add to this particular slider is the 50. And after that, we need to provide here another attribute, which is the data sizing. So data sizing, so we need to type the entire property, which is data sizing is going to be like percentage. If I control save it, you can see now we get this particular range slider. I'm going to copy it and pasting it to one more time. Then I'm going to change it like here label is going to be like for border, and then this is going to be like our border radius. And similarly we need to change the ID to border radius, not the biggest one. We just want smaller names like border radius. Then the type is going to be range because we want a slider. Then we want actually the name is going to be like again border radius. I'm going to copy the name, pasting it here, and then we need to actually specify the same minimum value. Means the minimum value, max value is going to be like from 0 to 100, and then at this the data sizing is going to be the pixel, because this particular thing is actually working on the basis of the pixel, because we want a 4 pixel border radius, 5 pixel, 10 pixel, and the next previous one, which is the width, we want to change the width on the basis of the percentage. Alright, we have specified the ID, we have specified the type, range, minimum value, and the value that we want is actually a 5. By default we want a 5 pixel border radius to our image. Alright, now again I'm going to copy it and pasting it into one more time. At this point of time, this is for the padding, and then here we also need to specify the padding, and then the input type is going to be the range. Then the ID that we want is actually a padding. Then also we need to specify the name to be like padding. Then the minimum value is like 10, because by default we want a 10 padding from 10 to 200, and then the value of the padding is actually we want a 0. Then padding is also working on the basis of the pixel, so we want to change the padding on the basis of the pixel. That is why I have specified the data sizing to pixel as well. Again I'm going to copy this one more time and pasting it here. Then this particular one is used for the blurriness, so I'm going to here use the blur, and this is for the blur. Then input type, and then the ID is going to be like blur, and the name is also going to be like blur. Then we need to specify the minimum value to 0, then the maximum value to 25, then value is going to be 0, and the data sizing is going to be pixel, because we want to change the blurriness of the image, or I can say that the image container, on the basis of the pixel unit. And after that we need to add the image after the end of this particular CSS controller division, that is this one. So this is the CSS controller division. So after the end of this particular CSS division controller, we need to here add the img tag. So the source, and also we need to provide the alternate text. Alternate text, you can actually provide it anything like image from pixabay. So I'm going to actually taken the image URL from the Pixabay. So I'm going to actually open a next tab here, and I will be typing here like Pixabay, not by, it's like Pixabay. So I can use any other image. Maybe I can find the same image like this particular bird one. So I will be using this scooter image. So I'm going to copy the link address, or I can say that the image address. I can copy the image address and I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to click on view and word wrap. Coming back to the our version of the project, and if I control save it, you can see now we are getting this particular image, but this particular image is actually in the form of vertical. So I want a rectangular image, that is these kinds of images. So it is this bird one. So I'm going to copy this particular image address, and I will be replacing the image path of the source. Control save it, and coming back to the our version of the project. Now that's it perfectly fine. So I'm going to close the Pixabay website. This image seems to be perfect for me. So that is for all the HTML part for this particular CSS changer application. In the next part, we're going to start with this CSS so that it will be look like this. Alright, so that's it for this particular lecture. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much. So now it's time to start with the CSS part of the project. So for that, we need to use the style.css file. Inside of the style.css file, first I'm going to select the universal selector. So inside of that, first I'm going to select the padding and setting the padding to 0, so that to reset the basic styling of the, means the default styling of the browser. And then here I will be using the box sizing to border box. Once I did that, you can see now the default styling of the browser is actually changed. Then I will be here using the root, and I'm going to create here some variables. So the first thing is I actually want here a padding, and this is going to be like 20 pixel. Okay, so this will be the padding for 20 pixel. Then I will create here a blur, and this blurriness is going to like 0 pixel by default. Then I want here a base, and this is for the RGB. Note this type, actually it is like RGB, and then to start its round brackets. Inside of that, 255, 133, and the color that we want. After that, we need to create the another one here, which is for the width, and this is going to be like 70%, or I can go with the 50%. Okay, and then I need to create here a fifth variable, which is for the border radius, and this is going to be 15 pixel. So these are the variables that we are going to use inside the project. And after that, we need to use the body element. Inside of that, first we need to change the display. So display is going to be like flex, then align items is going to center, and justify content is also going to be center. And after that, we need to provide the minimum height is going to be like 100 VH. You can see now the content is actually shifted to the center of the browser. Then we need to provide the text alignment to the note, and it is actually at the center. You can see everything is actually at the center of the browser. And then we need to change the font family. So font family is like monospace, or I can go with the sans serif, that is this one. You can see now the font of the project is actually changed. Then I will be using here a background color. So background color is going to be like F6, F6, and F6. You can see this will be the white background color. I think, yeah, it's actually a whitish color for the background for the entire body. Then I need to select the container, which is the main container in which everything is actually presented. Means every other content is actually presented inside this container. The first thing is we need to use the border radius. Not bow, it's like a border radius. So border radius is going to be like 20 pixel. And then we need to provide the background color. So I will be here using the linear gradient function. Not like this, we need to use only the background, otherwise we are not getting the linear gradient function. Now we get the linear gradient function. So it is going to like to right, comma, then we need to provide the two color, which is 1D2B64, and then we need to provide the another color, which is 61045F. and also I'm going to provide the hash symbol. Control save it. Now you can see the color of the container is actually changed. Okay, and then it's time to provide the box shadow as well, which is my favorite property. So I'm going to use here 10 pixel, then 10 pixel, and again we need to use here a 10 pixel, and this is actually going to be like RGBA. Then it is going to be like 246. Then for the green is going to like 178. Then for the blue is going to like 172. And for the alpha it is going to be like 0.2. Control save it, and then also we need to specify the reverse one, which is minus 10 pixel. Here we need to specify the comma, not a dot operator. 10, and again here we want to provide the 10 pixel, and then here we want to use the 30 pixel. Here we will be using the word wrap, right? View and word wrap, and 30 pixel, and again we need to use the RGBA, that is this one. And now we need to change the values, so it is going to like 255. This one is 107, and this one is also 107, and here we need to use the 0.8. Control save it. You can see now we get the box shadow to this particular container. And then we need to provide the padding. So padding is going to like 3 RAM units. You can see this is how our container will be looks like, and this will be the final version of the container. This will be the version of the application that we're actually going to build it. So that is all for the container. Now it's time to specify the code for this h1 element. So selecting the h1 element directly by specifying its name. The first thing is we need to change the font size. So font size I'm going to use here 2 RAM units, and then I need to use here a color. So color I will be using this one, which is for the white version of the color, and then I will be using the margin bottom property to 1 RAM unit. You can see there is a margin is applied to this particular h1 element. After that, we need to specify the code for the heading, which is the span element that has a class heading. Instead of that, I will be using the font size, going to be 2 RAM unit, which is this particular JavaScript one. Then again we need to provide the color, so I'm going to copy these 2 lines of the code and pasting it here. Just only thing that we want is actually color. So color we want to change it from the CSS variable function by using the base. Okay, this is the base, and here first we need to also terminate this one. You can see now the color is actually changed to this particular span element, and then we need to change the font weight to 800. You can say it's now looks more bolder. Okay, so that is for the heading. Then we need to provide the code for the CSS controller, that is this particular class that has the rest of the input elements, which is the range sliders. So we need to here use the dot, then name of the selector, and then starting the body of the selector. Inside of that, first we need to change the display to flex. So now they are actually appearing in a single row. Then we need to provide the flex direction to column. Now they are actually displaying one after the other, and after that we need to use the flex, means the align items, and it is going to like flex start. Once I did that, you can see now the everything is actually at the left of the container, which is the CSS controller container. Then we need to provide the padding. So padding from top and left is going to like 1 RAM, and from left and right it is going to be 0. You can see now the padding is applied to all of these particular CSS controllers. So from top and bottom it's going to like 1 RAM, and from left and right it is going to be 0. That is all for the CSS controller. Next we need to provide the code for the label. So every CSS controller has a label, so we are going to select the label here because the label has a text. Inside of the label, first we need to change the padding a little bit. So from padding from left it's going to like 1 RAM. You can see now the content is actually shifted from left to 1 padding, means 1 RAM padding. And after that we need to change the font size to 1 RAM as well. You can see now the font size is also increased, and then we need to provide the color. So color is going to be like this particular one. You can see now the color of these actually changed, and then we need to provide the margin top property. So from top we want a 0.5 rem margin to each of them. Okay, and then we need to provide the color code, and then we need to specify the code for the input elements or also for the image. So first I'm going to select the image. Now inside of the image, first we need to set the width. So width, we are going to again use the CSS function which is var, and with the use of the variables. So here we are going to use the value of the width, which is the 50%, and then we need to use here height. So height is going to like 80%, and after that we need to provide the margin top property, which is going to be like 1 rem, and then we need to provide the padding. Padding, again we are going to use the var function, and then here we need to provide the padding. Alright, and then we need to provide the filter. So these are the properties that we are going to also update by using the JavaScript code. So that is the reason I am actually here using the CSS variables with the use of the var. I am actually providing the values by using the CSS variable. Instead of that blur function, we are going to use the var and opening the closing and parentheses. Then here we need to provide the value of the blur variable. Okay, so these are the three values, and after that we need to provide the background color. So background color is going to like var, and here we need to provide the base, and then we need to provide the border radius. Border radius is going to be like here var. Instead of that we need to provide the border radius. You can see now the border radius is also applied to this particular project. Then we need to provide here a transition property, which is going to be like filter, and it is going to be like 0.3 s is 1 and comma background. Okay, so that is all for the image part of this particular project. Next we need to add the code for the input type. So input type, and then we need to specify the type. So type is actually the range. So input type is going to be the range one. So it is going to like range, and then we need to start its opening and closing bracket. Input type is actually going to be color. First we are going to select the color one, not the input type range. First we need to specify the code for the color. Okay, and here first we need to specify the width, because we want to just change this base color input type to a circular one, just like you can see it here. So for that we need to specify the width to 30% and also the height to 30%. You can see it's actually width and height to 30%, but we are also going to set it. So vertical align is going to be the middle. Okay, and then we need to also provide the margin left to 5 pixel, and also we need to provide the border radius to be 50%. You can see now it looks like a spherical ball, I think. Yeah, and then we need to use the border. So border is going to be like none, but we don't want to display the border. And then we need to also choose the outline to none, and then we need to use the cursor to pointer one, and it's actually not working. So for the reason it's not working, if I refresh it, we also need to provide some external WebKits. Like here we have to actually provide first CSS controller class name, and then I'm going to select the input, and again I will be here using the type, and then I'm going to here use some WebKits because I'm actually using a Chrome browser. So external annotation, you can say that WebKit, and this is going to be like a color. That is the one we want to use. Then first we want to specify the border to none, and then we need to provide the border radius to 50%. You can see now the border and the border radius property applied. Okay, and then first we have applied the color swatch. Then we also need to apply the color swatch wrapper. So I'm going to paste it here and color swatch, and then also I'm going to provide here a F1 and color swatch wrapper. Instead of that color swatch wrapper, we want to just simply change the padding, padding to 0. Alright, this will be the things that we want to use. And you can see right now the base color circular form is actually not visible. So these are the some external prefix, because these are not the part of the CSS, because not every browser will support it. So that is the reason we need to use this WebKit here, because right now I'm actually using the Chrome version of the browser. So if you are using the Firefox version, then you need to use the different. But the problem is that here we are not getting the rounded corner of the color. So even if I click on it, but we are actually not getting it. So I have to actually fix this, because there is a problem, and I have actually did everything correctly, but here I have actually using the 30%. If I actually use here pixels, so maybe it can fix the problem. I control save it. Yes, so it's actually fixed the problem. Now we're actually able to see the rounded circle. So these are the properties that is actually not internally supported by the CSS. So if you are using a Firefox version, then you need to here use the Moz, because if you want to run this project inside the Mozilla Firefox. So if I copy the path of this particular project, and if I open my Firefox browser, that is now open, if I paste it, then it will take a little time. Then you can see it's actually giving the square version. So that is the reason. So now I am actually going to copy it and pasting it one more time here, and here I will be adding the Moz prefix and also this Moz. If I now control save it, now you can see inside the Firefox version you are also getting this rounded corners, this rounded color of the input type color. Okay, so that is how you will use these WebKit and Moz prefixes inside the CSS to achieve the result that you want inside your project. Now the next thing is we want to modify is actually the input type of these sliders. So for that we need to add the code here. So again I'm going to paste it here, the CSS controller, like this one, which is the CSS controller, and it is going to like input, it's going to like type is equal to, and here we need to provide our codes is like range, and then to start its block of the code. Instead of that we need to provide the width, which is going to like 100%. So you can see now the width is also applied to 100%. If I refresh it, you can see. So if you want to change the value of this particular width from the default one, which is actually we have specified in the index.html, that is this one, you can change it to 30. You can see now the width value of the range slider is actually changed. So yeah, that is for the CSS part of the project, which is the CSS changer application. So from the next part we are going to start with the JavaScript part of the project. So whenever we update the values of these sliders, the values result will affect the image, that is this particular bird image. Okay, so that is for this particular lecture. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much. So now it's time to start with the JavaScript part for the project. So for that we need to use the JS file. So instead of that, first we need to create the variable. So I'm going to here use the const, and this is going to be like inputs. So it's going to hold all the inputs, because we are going to use the loops to actually listen to the change event of all of these particular 5 HTML elements. So out of 5, 4 are actually our range sliders, and the 1 is actually our input color slider, and 1 is our input color. And here we need to use the document dot get element by id. Instead of that we need to specify the id name, that is this CSS controller. So this will be the, that is this one, CSS controller. So we are going to use it. So it is actually a class selector. So here we need to use the query selector all, because we need to actually select for the multiple elements, because we are going to looking for the multiple elements. That is the reason we are actually going to use the query selector all, and also we need to specify the type of the selector. So it is actually a class selector. So that is the reason I have actually specified here a dot as well. And then we want to listen to each and every input element of the CSS controller class. So here we also need to specify the input that is actually going to denote the all of the input tags under this particular CSS controller class. Alright, so that is, now we get the reference to this inputs element that is treated as a node list of the HTML elements. Now it is actually an HTML element of the node list, so it will be like an array, so we can actually loop through it. So in order to loop through it, we can use here inputs.forEach, and then we are going to loop through it. So here we are going to specify the inputs, right? And then we are going to provide here an anonymous callback. Then we need to here provide the input, that is this one, and then we need to listen to the event listener. So I'm actually using the short syntax because this function doesn't have any name and there is only a one single statement. So that is the reason. So change, so we want to listen to the change event of the inputs, because every time whenever we drag it to the left and right and we actually click on it and drag it to the left and right, it's going to actually change the values of the slider. So it is actually a change input. Then we need to here call the update callback. So whenever there is a change appear in these sliders, or I can say that the HTML elements, it's going to call this particular update function every time. So we loop through each and every inputs of the class, which is the CSS controller, and then we are actually listen to its event, which is the change event, or I can say that the event listener change. And after that we need to create this update function. So here first I'm going to use the function keyword, then this update, and then we need to start its block of the code. Instead of that, first we need to create the variable which is called like variable suffix data is equal to, and then we need to use here a this, and then we need to use here a data set dot sizing. So why I have actually used here a this keyword, because we want to listen to the sizing of the inputs, all of these particular inputs. We want to access to this sizing property. Remember, in the index.html we are specifying the data sizing. So in order to access the data sizing, we need to actually use the this. All right, otherwise we don't get the reference to this data sizing property. So if it is not changed anything, then we want to select the empty suffix data. Now this suffix data will be useful once we are actually updating the CSS code through JavaScript by using this set property method, which is the next line of the code that we want to do. So here we want to update the CSS controller, means we want to update the CSS of the class CSS controller. So in order to do that, we actually want to update the values on a root level, which is the HTML level. So for that we need to use the document element, because we want to update the data of the element. So what we want to update? We want to update the style. So here we need to specify the style, and then through which we are going to update the style. So we need to use the set property method. So this set property function will take two arguments. The first is the property and the second is the value. The value is heavily dependent on the property, and the value of the property and the second argument, which is the value, is actually used to set the new value to the property. What I mean here, let me first type the code. So first I'm going to use here template string, then we want to update the values on the basis of the CSS variable. So that is why I have used here a double hyphen. Then we need to specify the dollar and which value we want to update. So the value that will be selected, suppose if I select here a width, then width will be actually initialized to this suffix data. So we want to update it on the basis of this suffix data, and with the use of this we are actually getting the reference to the width, which, because if I just simply drag it, that means the reference of this width data sizing property, which is the percentage property, will be initialized to this suffix data. All right, and then the value we want to update inside the set property, because we need to specify the property, because the set property function takes the first argument as a property of the CSS. So to get the CSS property name, we need to again use here a this dot name. So if I select here width, then that width will be initialized to here, which is going to update the value of the width. So once we get the property, then we want to update its value. So in order to update its value, again we need to use the this dot value plus what type of value we want to update. So that value is actually initialized inside this suffix data. So here we don't need to provide any semicolon because we are inside the function argument scope. So again I'm going to repeating it. The set property function will take two arguments, or you can say that the method, the set property will take two arguments. The first is the property, the second is the property value, or you can say that the value. So we need to get the reference to the property. So in order to get the reference to the property, we need to use the this. All right, and then once we get the name of the property, which is the width, maybe the border radius, maybe the padding, maybe the blur, then we want to update its value. So the value, we again need to use the this dot value, but what type of value we want to update? Either it is a percentage, it is a pixel based value, or it is a blurriness based value. So that will be determined by this particular variable data, which is the suffix data, which will be initialized by using this data sizing property, and we have already specified this data sizing to these input elements. So we are updating these values by using the JavaScript, and we are updating it at the document level with the use of this particular line of the code. We are updating the document elements by using the style property, because we want to update the CSS, so it is actually a style. So if I control save it, and now if I change the width, then you can see nothing is actually happening. Oh, actually it's actually changed. It's actually, there is a small delay, and that is because my PC is actually very slow right now. The reason for that, because I'm running a software as well. So you can see it's actually performing changes. So if I refresh it, now if I increase the width, so it will take time, I think, to change the width. You can see now the blurriness is applied instantly, and padding is also applied, the border radius is also applied, and the width is also applied. You can see now it's working perfectly fine. So it's taking little delay because right now I'm running a software which is the OBS, and you know that how horrible is the OBS, and also I'm running the editing software, and also I'm running some different kinds of browsers, and also my documentations are also open into MS Word, and also I'm running two more softwares for the audio editing purpose. So that is the reason the PC become little bit more heavy, and this application is taking little time for its working. But now the application is working perfectly fine. You can see now I am able to change the border radius, I can increase the blurriness level, I can increase the padding, and we can increase the width as well. So our application is working perfectly fine. So that's it for this particular project. If you like this project, then leave your review, because your review motivates me to create more awesome courses like this one. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.